Governor, I want to ask about race and unemployment. In 2006, the unemployment rate of black high school graduates, that's high school graduates, was 33% higher than the unemployment rate for white high school dropouts. What do you think accounts for that inequity?
Paul?
Walter Williams, a very astute free market economist, has studied this extensively. And he has found that prior to minimum wage laws, there was no discrepancy like this. So he put a lot of blame on the minimum wage law. Once government gets interfering, this takes away opportunities. And I believe there is a lot of truth to this because it eliminates an opportunity and a chance for a marginal worker. So once again, though, the economy is supported only when you have a sound economy perpetuated by government with sound policies. You have to have sound money. You have to have minimum taxes. You have to have, wise foreign policy. But I have a bill in that might help a lot of people, black or white or whomever. I have a bill in that would immediately help these people who are trying to get a start, that they would never have to pay any taxes or payroll taxes if they just happen to be a waiter or waitress, to give them a chance to get ahead and get a good job.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brownback.
Congressman Paul, the most commonly cited statistic for the number of illegal immigrants living in the United States is 12 million people. Is it desirable, is it even practical, to try to send them all home? If the next Congress passes comprehensive immigration reform that includes a path to citizenship, will you sign it, or will you support sending the 12 million home?
I'm very sorry, but I didn't hear your last sentence because of the acoustics.
In the next Congress, if the next Congress passes immigration reform that includes a path to citizenship, will you sign it, or will you support sending the 12 million home?
I would not sign a bill like you described because it would be construed and it would be amnesty, and I haven't supported amnesty. I also think that it's pretty impractical to get an army in this country to round up 12 or maybe 20 million. But I do believe that we have to stick to our guns when obeying the law, and anybody who comes in here illegally shouldn't be rewarded. And that would be the case. But I see the immigration problem as a consequence of our welfare state. Welfare because we encourage people not to work here, but the welfare we offer the people who come, they get free medical care, they get free education, they bankrupt our hospitals are closing, and it should not be rewarded. That means that if you don't round them up, you don't reward them, you don't give them citizenship. At the same time, you can't solve this problem until you get rid of the welfare state, because in a healthy economy, immigrants wouldn't be a threat to us. There would probably be a desire for more because we would be starved for workers. But today, they have become scapegoated because of the weak economy and the lowering of our standard of living.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brownback.
Senator Brownback, tonight, as young black and Latino Americans are watching this debate, they often feel quite alienated from the Republican Party, a party that does not seem to respond to their issues. You realize about 50% of young black and Latino people dropping out of high school, 35% poverty rate, nearly 60% of America's prison population, black and brown. The one area of these problems touching on federal government policy has to do with criminal justice. Today in Jena, Louisiana, it was announced that one of the Jena 6, originally convicted as an adult, will be tried now as a juvenile. Name one reform, Senator, that you would endorse to assure young black and Latino people in America that they will have equal justice in America's courts.
A system designed to protect individual liberty will have no punishments for any group and no privileges. Today, I think inner city folks and minorities are punished unfairly in the war on drugs. For instance, blacks make up 14% of those who use drugs, yet 36% of those arrested are blacks, and it ends up that 63% of those who finally end up in prison are blacks. This has to change. We don't have to have more courts and more prisons. We need to repeal the whole war on drugs. It isn't working. We have already spent over $400 billion since the early 70s, and it's a wasted money. Prohibition didn't work. Prohibition on drugs doesn't work. So we need to come to our senses, and absolutely, it's a disease. We don't treat alcoholics like this. This is a disease, and we should orient ourselves to this. That is one way you could have equal justice under the law.
Thank you, Congressman. The next question will be asked by Cynthia Tucker, answered first by Congressman Tancredo. Cynthia.
Congressman, recently a push to give the District of Columbia voting representation was defeated because of heavy Republican opposition. In addition, many voting rights advocates are worried about rigid voter ID laws, which require a photo ID like a driver's license. Are you concerned that some eligible voters will be denied the right to vote simply because they don't have a driver's license?
It's very clear under the Constitution that we couldn't give the vote to the residents of D.C. without an amendment to the Constitution, and it should be pursued in that manner. But when it comes to national ID cards, I mean, the identification, I think the states have the prerogative and the right and the obligations to identify the voters, and they should. But the reason I get worried about it when we start talking about it nationally is, you know, they might want to use the real ID. They might want to think it's a good excuse to have a national ID card to vote, and I am positively opposed to any move toward the national ID card.
Thank you. Senator Brownback?
Yes.
Congressman Hunter, the Federal Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality recently reported that both Latinos and blacks receive significantly worse, in their words, medical care than whites in the United States. 1 out of 3 Hispanics, 1 out of 5 black Americans is uninsured. Hispanics are 2.5 times as likely as a non-Hispanic white American to be uninsured. 1 of 3 Hispanics hasn't been to the doctor in more than a year, and as has already been mentioned, diabetes, asthma, hypertension are untreated or undertreated in communities across America. What does your health care plan contain to address some of these disparities in access to care and access to quality health care?
We've had managed care in this country since the early 70s, and it hasn't worked well. It's very, very expensive, and it's the fault that we changed our ERISA law and our tax laws that created this corporatism that runs medicine. Wall Street rakes off the profits, the patients are unhappy, the doctors are unhappy, and it's a monopoly now. Who lobbyists us in Washington? The drug companies and the HMOs, they come, and now what is the cry for? Socialized medicine. That's not the answer. We need to get the government out of the way. Inflation hits the middle class and the poor the most. Those are the people who are losing it. It's just not minorities, anybody poor, because inflation wipes out the middle class, and we have to deal with that. If you have a product that's not dealt with by government, prices go down when you have modern technology. In medicine, with all this technology, prices still go up, but that's because the government is involved. We don't have enough competition. There's a doctor monopoly out there. We need alternative health care freely available to the people. They ought to be able to make their own choices and not controlled by the FDA, preventing them to use some of the medications.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brownback.